Mhm. Ujo and Duo, everyone. Can I get a sound check? And anyone let me know if you have sound, if you can see my
Nisa,
video.
hi. Your camera's on, the screen share is on, and we can hear you. Heads up.
Okay, Duo. Ujo again, everyone, and Duo for joining today. We are doing a brief review of the last book that was published a few weeks ago. by the name How Long Does Enlightenment Take? Realistic Timelines from Ancient Egyptian Psychology and Modern Neuroscience Research on Contemporary Meditators. This book is part of, you can see the top here, the Kemetic Transpersonal Psychology series. And I did a talk on the other books in the series. 3 books have come out already. But before we go further, let's do opening prayers, and then we'll discuss a little further. Om Amurapata, Om Amurapata, Om Amurapata, Om Amurapata, Amasua Paneter, Sauxumete Paneter, Adwanuma, Kedi Paharu. It's up. So as I was saying, this book is the third in a series, which is not necessarily in order. The books are coming out kind of in an organic way. There are slated to be about 5 books in this series, so 3 of them are out already. And so this one is dealing with a particular aspect of the spiritual journey. It was originally one of the chapters in the book Mental Health and Ancient Egyptian Psychology, the teachings of Sage Amenemopet. And the chapter turned out to be so long, and the topic was so wide ranging that I decided to expand it and make a separate book out of it. It's smaller than the other 2 books that have come out already. It'll probably be the smallest one out of the whole series. But it is important because it deals with a very important topic of the spiritual practice, the spiritual journey of life. And that topic is, what is enlightenment? What is needed to happen in order to attain enlightenment? Why is enlightenment so important? And frankly, why is life so screwed up, so unfulfilling, so troubling? And what did the ancients discover about life and the means to make life meaningful? And they that discovery is called enlightenment. It's what the Buddhists call enlightenment. The ancient Egyptian word is nahas. There are a couple of other terms that are used. That's the main one that we use. When you say nukpu asar, you're essentially saying the same thing. I am divine consciousness. But we're gonna look at what enlightenment means from the Kemetic perspective, and the necessary actions and practices in order to be able to experience enlightenment. And notice I didn't necessarily say attain enlightenment. And I'll explain why, making the distinction between those 2 terms. So let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. In order to understand the topic, we need to define what enlightenment is. Ab netter, the recognition of divine consciousness within. That's the short definition. The longer definition is, enlightenment is the stable awareness and recognition not as intellectual concept or memory, but as living experience, that individual consciousness, ab netter, as termed by sage Amenemopet, that sustains individual human perception through mind and senses, is one with the sustained and sustained by Neberger, the all-encompassing absolute consciousness. It is the permanent dissolution of the egoistic delusion of soul separation from all-encompassing consciousness, Neberger, resulting in unshakable serenity and inner peace, freedom from fear, the need to see oneself, see one's egoistic will manifest in the world, and recognition of the divine as one's own true nature. So, summarizing a little bit, basically, it is the discovery that you are more than just individual conscious awareness. You're an individual who is aware of your life as a human, as a body, in relation to other humans, human bodies, and animals, and plants, and all the objects of time and space. It is about discovering that your individual conscious awareness is actually a manifestation, a projection from all encompassing absolute consciousness. So your individual consciousness is owed to a larger universal consciousness. And not only is that to be realized, but is to be realized in a stable manner, not in an intermittent manner, in a shakable manner. Like you say, oh, I feel enlightened and everything is wonderful and God is everywhere. But then you have trouble in your life, and then that is thrown out the window. You're crying and carrying on, and or angry and upset and everything. So that's not stable. It is better than not having it at all, but it's not stable. And that is related in the teaching of this Asar and resurrection, as Set trying to topple the crown of Heru. That ability or that eventuality means that Heru is your spiritual aspiration, your higher nature. It has not attained a level that is beyond the capacity of your ego self, your set self, to topple your conscious awareness of a divine existence. So that's what enlightenment is in a definition. And I just gave a little bit of expansion on that. Basically, if you're experiencing enlightened consciousness, when you experience trouble in the world, your enlightened consciousness is not, or awareness of it, of enlightened consciousness is not going to be uh, thrown out. It's not going to be toppled. It's not going to be disturbed. Even if you're in pain, even if there is trouble in the world that you're going through, you're not going to lose awareness of that. And that's going to give you comfort. That's going to give you freedom from falling into the pit of despair, the pits of anger and hatred and disillusionment and frustrations of the world. That experience of enlightenment is all fulfilling, and therefore, having achieved that level of experience, then it means that you are free from the egoic desire to be fulfilled through worldly attainments or worldly possessions. So the world is not going to trouble you in that way, the way an ordinary person would be troubled by everything that happens in the world. That's called freedom, and that is also termed Ger, or a really a Ur Ger. We can term the great serenity, because Nebuchadnezzar may be considered as the great serenity. And so this is why Amenemopet admonishes everyone to pursue serenity, pursue Ger, and move away from Shem. or a heated mind. But we'll discuss that a little bit more as we go along. So the next important thing for you to know, it looks like there was a problem with the transfer of the fonts. There's a little font there in the middle. Yeah, as you said, I should have changed it over from before. It's okay.
You can open up the PowerPoint.
Is it going to be in there? That's the question.
In the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to find it. It's saved in documents.
It's here. And it's not there.
It's in documents.
The font is not there.
Oh, I see. So it's not on the PowerPoint either.
Yeah, probably because it's not on the computer.
I see.
Anyway, the message is that you already, every one of you who are listening, really, and everyone in the world, already have enlightened consciousness. And you see there's 3 exclamation points there. Abnetter, the divine consciousness within, already sustains your every moment of awareness. It is not distant. It is not absent. It is the very source from which your awareness arises right now, this instant. Right, in the presence. You're always in the presence of you're not just in the presence of the divine. You really are the essence of who you are is the divine, even now. You can see on the bottom of the screen, there are some, if you want to stop this recording later, there are some notes, some citations where you can find these references. And I'm using all the book series now, but the main one is How Long Does It Take? So if you say Nukpu Asar, I am Osiris, ancient Egyptian book of enlightenment, Purdom Heru, it means the same thing. So if you already have enlightened consciousness, then what are we doing here? We could stop the presentation right now because you already have enlightened consciousness, right? So there's nothing to do, nothing further to talk about, or there shouldn't be. But there are some intervening issues, some troubling issues that are blocking the awareness of enlightenment. The singular goal of human life, reflected in all the temples and scriptures, is promoting Sa'ank, divine grace, that leads to Nehas, or enlightenment. Sa'ank, divine grace, is actions that allow one to come closer to and in association with divine consciousness, and that is termed Ra, the creator spirit. And Ra, which may be understood as the cosmic mind, the universal divinity of creation, that leads us to experience Nebuchadnezzar, or universal, all-encompassing, transcendental divinity. When you go to the temples and you see the royal person embracing a goddess or a god, or they're making an offering, these are acts of Sa'ank, of communing with divinity that connects us to the divine, that extends divine grace to us in our life, comfort and protection. And it also brings us the closeness to enlightened consciousness, to Nebuchadnezzar. The ancient sages of Kemet taught that all worldly pursuits, wealth, fame, relationships, power, are transient expressions of deeper longing. Behind every desire lies the one desire to return to wholeness to know one's true nature. When you're trying to have fulfillment in the world, you're actually trying to find wholeness because you feel not whole. Because you have conscious awareness, but you don't have awareness of enlightened consciousness. You have individual awareness, and that is tied up in your desires, in your memories, in your body's hormones, the illusionists of time and space, relationships, and you're caught up in that. Recognizing this falsity of the world, the unfulfilling nature of time and space, relationships and wealth and pleasures should not be considered pessimism. It should be recognition, not a pessimism towards life. It is the most liberating truth the mind can encounter. Earthly existence offers extraordinary opportunities for growth, beauty, and service. Yet the sages were clear until the mind recognizes its divine source, all achievements rest on an unstable foundation. Our own corruption of mind prevents our movement towards enlightenment. The corruption is thinking that you're going to achieve anything in the world of time and space, and that that is going to be abiding and fulfilling. That corruption, Sita Minimupet says in chapter 11, verse 11, is that which is blocking, is preventing, it is thwarting our movement towards spiritual enlightenment. In Jet, Mejat Pa Rek, Chenau Pa Menk. The corruption is preventing us from attaining spiritual perfection. That is why the goal of life is elusive. We ourselves are corrupting our own or thwarting our own capacity for attaining enlightenment by falling into the delusion of wealth, fame, pleasure, the idea of abiding attainments in the world of time and space, and the idea that those are going to produce abiding happiness and fulfillment. So the problem is, if not experienced spontaneously, naturally, obviously, innately, instinctively, effortlessly, why is enlightenment not experienced? Why not? Why don't you experience enlightened consciousness right now? If you have enlightened consciousness, as we said before, why don't you experience it right now? Before going forward, I should say that this is not exactly correct in the sense that if you do not experience yourself as an enlightened personality, you don't experience enlightened consciousness. If you don't experience yourself beyond your individuality, beyond your ego mind and senses and the perceptions, obviously that's not exactly true because some of it is leaking through enlightened consciousness, some of it is leaking through into your personality, and that is what is motivating you to practice Shedi, to listen to this kind of talk, to read the books. But the idea is that you want it to be in its fullness and you want it to be stable. So what is preventing that stability, what is making it intermittent, sometimes you feel really good and lucid and you feel connected and spiritually elevated, and sometimes you feel depressed and doldrums, anger, hatred. The answer is why that's happening is because are you? The accumulated impressions of all past thoughts, feelings, desires, experiences, and memories that are lodged in the in the unconscious mind, are so dense they blot out awareness of Abnetter, your divinity that is in the unconscious mind, sustaining your mind, your perceptions, your reality. You're not aware of it. You're only aware of the perceptions, the apparent reality that your senses bring to you, and the idea of yourself that you've learned about being an individual who was born a particular day and who has this particular human parents and all that kind of thing. At Netter, the divine presence already residing in the kara. Kara is the shrine of your heart, of your unconscious mind. All this is according to Sage Amenemopet. In a deluded mind, the RU, unconscious impressions of past experiences in the mind, veils the mind's recognition of the divine self, Nepiger, universal consciousness, as one is oblivious to that underlying reality and pays attention to thoughts, feelings, and worldly objects related to those thoughts and feelings in relation to oneself as the ego identity in a never ending and oftentimes futile, self defeating struggle for happiness and fulfillment that always eventually ends in failure and frustration. So the RU is blocking you from experiencing divine consciousness, witness consciousness, and is keeping you involved in the objectives and desires of your personality, your ego personality. Keeps you involved with your thoughts and feelings and desires and your struggles, your thoughts, opinions, habits. All these play a part in veiling the nature of your unlimited divine consciousness. By adulthood, the mind has absorbed thousands of hours of worldly conditioning, creating the density in the unconscious mind, density of the RU that prevents abnetter recognition. So, from a Muppet perspective, that negative RU that corrupts the personality, that veils your higher awareness, it is related to what is called Shem, that is heated mind and feelings, reactive emotions, egoic desires, fears, etc. If you experience enough of that, it causes denseness of your unconscious mind. Denseness can be defined as heaviness, thick, opaque, individual memories, individual feeling memories, RE or feeling memories, or you can have a lot of light feeling memories, but they're a worldly nature, and they can be multi-layered. And the multi-layering makes them opaque and makes them heavy and makes them dense, thick. So by the time that a person has, by the time even that you're a preschooler, let alone teenager, and that teenagers have something on top of all of this, which is the raging hormones. So they're really out of control. And by the time you grow up and become a young adult, already your personality has been formatted by all these experiences. Then if you watch the news, and if you like modern times now, in the last 30 years, where we have cell phones, 20 years, we have smartphones and the social media and everything else. That's on top of all the other troubles that humanity has had in the last 100 years, which are more than humanity has had in and maybe even in the previous five, six, 700, 1,000 years, which is more than what they had 1,000 years before that. So humanity is in a real pickle. So the heated mind creates this denseness of the RU, and that makes the unconscious level of the mind opaque, heavy, dense, and so you are not able to perceive anything other than this opacity. Since your divine nature resides behind that opacity, then that opacity is blocking you from experiencing it, from discovering it. And so, therefore, what needs to be done is that opacity needs to be thinned out. It needs to be cleansed, it needs to be purified. And then, if that is so, then the personality, your egoic level of awareness, is able to go into deeper states of awareness until the abnetter is discovered. You go from the waking state into a level of your unconscious mind where your thoughts and feelings subside temporarily, called Andrutev. You practice staying there long enough in your meditative practice, and eventually there is thinning out and revelation of the abnetter level of self. In order to be able to do that, there's a spiritual disciplines that have been enjoined for helping to thin out the mind and to make the mind more subtle, purify its thinking capacity, the thought process, wisdom understanding, also disciplines to curb the egoic level of personality, dispassion, detachment, righteousness, ethical conscience. And so all that helps to deal with the problem. What must be done then? Purify mind from the obstructions blocking the experience of universal consciousness, laying the foundation for the movement of self-discovery, Maat ethics, and ethical living. Before formal meditation can succeed, the life must be harmonized with Maat, divine truth, justice, and right order. Ethical violations continuously generate new negative deception promoting RU, sabotaging, corrupting. Purification efforts towards promoting clarity of thought and feeling about the nature of one's being. The ancient sages prescribed this thought, this foundation, not as moral ideal alone, but as spiritual technology. The mind, purified of reactive behavior, becomes capable of the silence required for abnetter recognition. Silence is another way of saying serenity. So yeah, you need to learn speech discipline, ethical action, emotional regulation, and devotional practice. That's the Sa'ang, the divine grace aspect. So we're going to discuss a couple of core practices that are discovered in two of the scriptures, in two particular scriptures. And then we're going to discuss how these fit into the message of the book, how long it takes. So, because these are core practices that are done that that are done to over time purify the personality and achieve the capacity to experience enlightenment. So, this particular scripture is the legend of Ra and Aset, contained in the corpus of Turin Papyri. We did a course on this scripture that is available at the Saru College at Kemetic University. The main teaching of this scripture on meditative practice is related to a threefold process of listening, reflection, meditation that was practiced specifically in the Temple of Aset. In this scripture, the scripture of Isis and Ra, the same struggle, the same solution for timeless success. Behold, the goddess Aset, she was living in the form of a woman, of a physical woman in ancient times. She incarnated into the body of a regular person. So she was divine consciousness, but then she incarnated and experienced life the way we do. Aset had no desire for human existence. She developed dispassion, detachment. She developed dispassion towards human beings. The ancient aspirant faced the same struggle as the modern seeker and succeeded. So, this scripture is about how consciousness becomes embodied or becomes associated with individuated human existence and discovers the limitation of that experience and develops dispassion and detachment because of that discovery and because of facing that, being strong enough to face, because many people are not strong enough to face that because this is all that they live for, all that they know. So if you tell them that they're following a futile pursuit, they're going to reject that. So the personality has to be led through a process of initiation where you learn about the nature of creation, the nature of life, showing the the deficits, but also including the solution to the problem of life. So this should not be told to an ordinary person who is not initiated. They will reject it and they will think you're crazy. So don't bother doing that. In this practice, the first step is to facing and discovering for yourself, and you can have help and people helping point that out to you, the limitations of life. You cannot fall in love with someone and be eternally happy with them and fulfilled. You will not be even fulfilled for a week. The novelty of your wedding is going to wear off. You're gonna have some time when they're not feeling well, and they're gonna bite your head off, or you're gonna bite their head off, and then you're gonna feel bad about it and make up and all this kind of thing. You have children, they will disappoint you at some point. Maybe they don't disappoint you, but maybe they die unexpectedly of an accident, so you're heartbroken. You yourself, you may be healthy one day, and then you're not healthy the next day. Your friends or neighbors, they did something that you can't believe that they did, and you thought you were so friendly with them. All these are all delusions that we follow, and then we get surprised when there's a realization of the contrary. You thought you had a government that was for you. You thought that you had a health system that was designed to take care of you. And you can be doing something, even doing something good, and making a mistake even as you're doing it. You bought a detergent at the store, and it said it's natural, non-toxic, but then later you discover that it had some ingredient that you're allergic to, and then you ended up in a hospital with an allergic reaction. So you're doing something that you thought was right. So you could be doing something right now and discover tomorrow that it's an error. So there's inherent imperfection in time and space. A wise person, a thoughtful person, does not dismiss that and say, "Oh, that's just life. We have to go on and the ups and downs." And no, that's a flaw, and it's a fatal flaw, really. And if you allow yourself to face that in that way, then that opens the door to you be able to explore and discover what lies beyond the imperfection of human existence. So, in this particular teaching, listening, reflection, meditation, but it begins with dispassion and detachment. If you don't have dispassion and detachment, and you're trying to listen to the teaching, but also hold on to the delusion of the world, how is that going to work? It's not going to work very well. So, an avid initiate has to learn to cultivate dispassion and detachment. Now, the next teaching that we're going to explore is the teaching of Amenemopet, and the key core practices moving from Shem to Ger to Nebuchadnezzar. Shem is heated, reactive, agitated mind, worldly personality, governed by anger, hatred, elation, frustration. Moving from that to being serene in all situations, being relaxed and being. And this doesn't mean that you're just going to be placid and quiet and but it means that you're going to be not caught up in the delusion of the personality related to situations and objects, and you're not going to lose your awareness that you are an entity that transcends your mind, its thoughts, its desires, relationships, objects that you own or that you desire, the worldly situations. That is called Ger. And Ger is can be translated as serenity or silence. So you're moving from heated mind to serene mind, and that opens the capacity to discover Nebuchadnezzar or absolute consciousness, absolute serenity. In verse 14, the scripture, Tejamenemopa says, Sautu mejat he Nebuchadnezzar. Remain aware with deliberate effort as to so I'm not sure if verse number is correct on that. It might have translated when I transferred the but anyway, it's correct in the books. Um, yeah, anyway, remain aware with deliberate effort as to the fact that there is an entity, an existence that encompasses all creation, all encompassing divinity, Nebuchadnezzar, beyond underlying mind and time and space. This existence, consciousness, underlies limited human awareness. Maintain this awareness above all else. When you're moving, if you're in a state of heated mind, you're not able to hold on to this awareness. You need to move to serene mind, to silent mind. And that allows you to enter into deeper levels of subtlety and awareness, leading to absolute serenity, absolute consciousness awareness. So this is the process that is enjoined in the scripture, the wisdom text by Ahmed Mokbet. Now, modern researchers have been looking into these kinds of practices. They've been studying uh, people in the East, people practicing Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and others who practice different types of meditation. And there have been studies on this that have been published, and some of the studies talk about different levels of attainment and how long they take. And so a person may start meditating, say, 30 minutes a day. They may move after a few months, they may move to 45, 60 minutes per day. When they just start doing this, initial neuroplastic changes in attention networks occur. First glimpses of witness consciousness may occur. This is the unstable level, but you get glimpses. Reduction in reactive emotional patterns occurs. Beginning thinning of surface RU. Increased capacity for mental silence occurs. But these are passing, these are brief. It is beginning. As you progress, stable witness consciousness begins to be established. RU patterns substantially reduced. Heated mind increasingly replaced by silence mind. Egoism begins to dissolve. Initial app network awareness becoming accessible. And as you might progress, that's going from a daily, weekly practice to several weeks and months to up to a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and then we're moving even more, 3 to 10 years, 10 to 20 years, meditating an hour to an hour and a half a day. That's 2,000 to 5,000 hours a year. Witness consciousness as it becomes a more of a stable baseline. Reactive episodes, rare and brief, more and more rare, more and more brief. Silent mind established as the natural state. Deeper RU thinning, revealing ab nectar begins to occur. Nebular awareness throughout the day, instead of only seconds or minutes at a time. And what that means is that instead of like when somebody calls your name, you react spontaneously. If somebody calls somebody else's name, you don't react and look at them and or who's calling you and all that. Imagine if you were to discover the nature of yourself as Nebuchadnezzar as spontaneously as when they call your worldly name. They say Jim and you look around or Jane. What if they were to say Nebuchadnezzar? What would you how would you react to that if you were in a state of Nebuchadnezzar awareness? And that state of Nebuchadnezzar awareness, if stable, it does not mean that it goes away when you are tending to worldly activities with your mind and senses. It just as you're just as when you're doing something In the world, time, space, you're not always thinking about who you are, who your name is. You're concentrating on something. In the same way, if you have this higher attainment, it would remain there and it would always be there regardless of what is going on in your mind and the body. And it's available for spontaneous experience at any time. And therefore, whatever's going on in time space, there would be a freedom of experience within yourself and a lack of dependency on the world of time and space. Going further, you're meditating more hours per day and doing that for 10 to 20 years now. Nebular awareness as continuous baseline begins to be experienced. RU thin to transparency. So you may have RU, but it does not, it's inconsequential. It doesn't control you, it doesn't impel you anything. You are aware of it and you can see it, but it doesn't have any control of you at all to distract you from your nebular awareness or compel you to do any activity in the world that you don't want to do. We should say that your nebular doesn't want to do. Egoism substantially dissolved, and you're more aware of yourself as nebular consciousness. Formal meditation, daily practice, distinction dissolves. So you're doing this high level meditation practice, but that becomes blended with your day to day reality. You're always in a state of meditative awareness. In other words, you're not going to be a whirl in the world and caught up in the world, and then you're going to come sit and be quiet and be meditative. That distinction. So then it means that you're enlightened all the time, or you're moving towards enlightenment all the time, or you're in a state of higher awareness all the time. Individual consciousness recognized as nebular. That's of course the higher goal. So this has been studied in certain meditators. Like I said, some people who meditate an hour per day, and they're doing it for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, 5 years, and then up to 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And in those studies, there has been kind of a sweet spot discovered, and that's around meditating, 1 to 2 hours a day for 10 years. But then that's the sweet spot. That's like an average, but it means that some people take longer. Some people may take decades. They may need to meditate or do this kind of concentrated work 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And there are some who can do it in 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, some in months. And so we'll have a little awareness about that. But all this, we're going to see what this depends on. Essentially, I'll just go ahead and talk about it now. It depends on the denseness of the RU, the opacity, the heaviness, the accumulated negative RU that is blocking you. That's one component. The other component is your intensity with Shedi discipline. Shedi is your spiritual practices, your meditation, your study of wisdom teachings, your Sa'ank devotional practices. How much time do you spend with Kanum Nefer in good association? Do you hang out with negative people? Do you engage in negative activities that produce more negative RU for you? How well do you understand the teaching and the goal of life? How much dispassionate attachment have you developed? The more you engage those aspects, the more you can work to thin out your RU, to the fastest extent possible for your individual personality and unconscious RU structure. So some people may take months, a few years. Um, some people may take a decade or two. The purpose of cultivating serenity is to become free of heated mind involvement in the mind, senses, and external world, so as to discover the underlying awareness consciousness that is the foundation of individual. It says in individual, it says it should be individual conscious awareness and be able to it says abode, it should be abide in the spell check didn't work on this one. Abide in the awareness, in that deeper awareness until it is realized as the essential nature of being beyond individuated ego awareness. So the idea of cultivating serenity, refraining from being heated, and like I said, it doesn't mean that you will not do heated actions or do things fast or take care of your duties, things like that. It means that you're not going to carry it on with egoistic intent. You're going to do it with altruistic, ethical intent, with deliberation and precision. And you're doing that to help you thin out the RU. If you're doing heated action, it's going to inflame your RU and inflame your egoistic mind, cause distraction, movement. If you cultivate serenity, it's going to lead you to a place where you can discern and experience the underlying awareness consciousness, witness consciousness, that is the deeper reality of yourself. And that is the enlightened consciousness that you have, that we said at the beginning that you have, that is there now as we speak. And it just needs to be revealed. The promise of Sage Amenemopet is if this awareness is maintained, there will be no egoism and no mind, and therefore no fears, frustrations, inordinate desires, no need for stealing, lying, cheating, or becoming a heated person. So, when does enlightenment happen? Enlightenment is not a happening, except if you want to consider it from the perspective of the mind. Enlightened consciousness is always there, so it's not something that does not exist and then turns on when you do something. It's something that exists, always has been there. It's infinite, eternal, but the corruption of the mind has made it as if one has turned away from it and is not able to see it, to experience it. So enlightenment does not happen from the perspective of enlightened consciousness. From the perspective of the individual person who is striving and doing meditation and trying to be a good person and study teachings, from that perspective, it can be said that enlightenment happens to them at some point after certain degrees of spiritual practice and evolution. That they spontaneously one day realize that, hey, I am witness consciousness. I'm not this individual limited mortal person. So therefore, if that is the case, if enlightenment does not have a a set time that it occurs, it's not something that occurs, it's something that is. It depends on the mind of the personality, when they're able to realize the existence of enlightened consciousness. Now, having said that, from a strict philosophical point of view, that statement just now is incorrect because, think about it, when you're dreaming at night, you're having a dream, and then you wake up from the dream. The analogy is that enlightenment is the waking up, but when you wake up, you realize that the dream did not exist, the dream never happened. In the same way, if you realize enlightened consciousness, it is also the realization that you were never really an individual person, and what you're experiencing is the projection of mind, of the cosmic mind of the divine that has projected all of this existence. And all this is happening within the consciousness of Nebuchadnezzar. And therefore, just like when you're sleeping at night, everything that's happening in your mind is a projection of your consciousness into the dream world. Everything in the dream world is composed of your consciousness that you're projecting. Everything in this world is composed of Nebuchadnezzar, manifesting as what your limited mind thinks is a tree, a dog, another person. But all this is actually consciousness manifesting as time and space to your perception. From that limited awareness, there is time and space. From the perspective of a person who wakes up to enlightened consciousness, time and space never existed. And the manifestation of yourself as an individual is not an abiding reality. And therefore, that is thrown out too. If something is not real, if something is not effective and it's not abiding, it's not real. The true nature of who you are is not the individual body and mind. Therefore, the individual body and mind are illusory and non-abiding. And you have woken up. Now, going back to the person on the bed sleeping, you can have a dream and your consciousness, your body, your personality is on the bed sleeping, and you are incarnating into your dream world, having a dream, and you can wake up inside your dream and realize that you are dreaming. But you realize that your consciousness is also on the bed. An enlightened person is like that. They are experiencing time and space, but they have woken up to the dream of the delusion of time and space. And that those people are called sages, those people are called enlightened personalities. And for them, since they have realized that they are eternal and infinite, the when they started to experience the individual particular body and its life and its family and its situations, that has no meaning because they are eternal and immortal. If we were going to say that, then we should also, if we're not going to say that, then we should also say, if we're going to say, oh, that this really happened and this life is real and I was born here and these are my parents and this is my life, and yes, I'm enlightened too, but this is a reality too. And if we're going to say that, then we also have to say What about the person that you were 200 years ago, and the one the life that you lived 500 years before that, 1,000 years before that, and another 1,000 years before that one? Which one of those is real? That's like saying you have a dream at night, and you have multiple dreams, 2 or 3 or 4 dreams, but then you wake up once. You don't wake up 3 or 4 times from your dream at night. You have had many lives. It's called uhemank, many lives, and you may have found yourself in this lifetime as a male person or as a female person. Last time you were an opposite gender. Time before that, you were back to the other gender. So which one is the true one? The answer is that none of them are the true one. The only true one is enlightened consciousness. In the book, some personalities who are purported to be enlightened personalities in the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries are discussed, and their lives are discussed in the book. And from the perspective of talking about their struggles and their experiences, and most of them did spiritual practices, and they struggled. Some of them struggled for decades until they were able to clear out enough RU so that they could have clear understanding, and then purity of the RU from living righteously and being able to then apply themselves diligently in a process of introspection to discover enlightened consciousness within themselves. So those are discussed in the book. Some of these names you may recognize. So, but I wanted to leave you here with this idea. No one knows exactly how long, but it will happen. Every moment of time and attention redirected from worldly delusion to the divine is purification already occurring. Diligent intent is the only requirement. The rest unfolds by divine law. Whether achieved gradually or over decades or suddenly through optimal conditions, the recognition is the natural birthright of consciousness itself. So enlightenment can take decades of diligent daily practice for those with dense RU, strong worldly animus, and ordinary practice conditions. So if a person is lackadaisical and they're doing all the spiritual practices, but they're not intense, that's going to be one set of time that is going to take them to thin out their RU and purify themselves. If they are intense with their dispassion detachment, intense with their their spiritual studies, devotional practices, working towards serenity, then it's going to likely happen sooner for them. Some people it may take lifetimes. Some may take decades. Some may take a few years, a few months, etc. Like I said before, for those who falter, stop the effort. Like there's some people who they come into the teaching and they're very intense and they're really into it and they can quote scriptures understand. Yes, I've heard it. I know, I understand it and everything. And then something happens that they get blindsided. All of a sudden, some huge unconscious RU takes over, and they stop coming to class, and then you find out that later that they got involved with someone. They had a baby, or they got married, and they're traveling the world and having fun and all this kind of thing. And so to those people, the the stagely philosophy says, yeah, go for it, do it. Because those wild oats, if they are pursued and sown and reaped, et cetera, the faster the intensity and the fuel of that RU pulling you down to worldliness is going to expire, and then you can get back to the teaching. And that is in the order of, of human nature, of how that happens. So one should not feel sad or angry about that. That's just how it is. A person having a dream, they want to have more dreams. It's like that guy in the Matrix where he says, "I know I'm eating this steak and I know it's not real, but I enjoy it. I like it." And he's going to continue being caught up in the delusion of the Matrix until such time as he finally has had enough, which may happen in the next lifetime or the one after that. So enlightenment can take decades, it could take lifetimes, it could take, it can happen in an instant. For those whose RU is sufficiently thin, whose wisdom is clear, whose mind has been redirected fully towards the divine, when all the conditions ripen and it's cut off, their recognition occurs not over decades or lifetimes, it occurs spontaneously. And that idea of spontaneously can be described as whenever a person attains the awareness of enlightened consciousness, whether it took them weeks, months, days, years, decades, that um, realization is said to be spontaneous. But from a practical standpoint, it occurs in degrees of greater and greater awareness. It doesn't happen just like nothing, 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 and all of a sudden, enlightened consciousness. It happens in degrees that you have expansion in your awareness, and suddenly you realize that your awareness is all encompassing existence. And this is what the entire ancient Egyptian society was based on. And the book discusses not just the ancient Egyptian, it discusses the Hindu, the Vedanta, Buddhism, and a few others. This is a search of humanity, so it's not just the purview of Kemetic. And these are some of the references used in the book, but it's all listed in the book. That's it. That's it. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, so the focus of the study was primarily like more meditation based as far as like the integral study disciplines, correct? Oh, I cannot hear you. Is it just me?
It looks like he's muted.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it got muted. I wasn't doing anything. I would say so, kind of in a meditative context, but I presented it today kind of in a broader, fuller, you know, wisdom, spiritual practices, dispassion, everything all inclusive. And the meditative aspect is kind of more like the concentrated effort of all those, what all those disciplines allow one to be able to practice and expand. So the idea of being able to do those practices and cleanse the personality, is so that that concentration can be done to discover the enlightened consciousness. But once that enlightened consciousness is discovered, those practices don't have to be done, because that enlightened consciousness will remain present, and it's not going to be, like I was explaining. It's not going to be. It's out, and while you're not, thinking about it. If you have to think about it and remember it, then you don't really. It's not really abiding. It's not really an abiding attainment. So you're doing the meditative practices, all the disciplines, in order to achieve that discovery. Once the discovery is made, those disciplines do not need to be done. They may be done as out of habit, but they don't need to be done disciplinarily to maintain enlightened awareness. Because the problem blocking it has been removed.
Uja, Savima. I was also thinking of you gave the example of the gentleman with the in the Matrix, how when you have the vision, for those who saw the movie, everything showed up in those like, you know, digital ways. And I was thinking just another example, even at the level of atoms, if we had atomic vision that we could see, atoms, but we only saw atoms, um, instead of the, names and forms, uh, how that would reduce a lot of the desires, in other words. Like, in other words, if we recognize, I guess another way is like everything is made up of the same elements. It's just different mixtures of elements. Some people say fire, air, earth, water, ether. Um, everything is a mixture of that, or even all the elements in the, table of elements, that everything is made up of the same stuff, those same elements, just in different, formulations. So all these varieties of everything that we're seeing, and we've all the names and the forms even there, even if we could think of it in terms of atoms or the same elements, then that, and it's even that little bit of it, not even getting into the spiritual thinking, just even at the physical mental level, that there in itself already, uh one can feel within oneself, that there would be like a reduced urge, for many things that one may desire in time and space. I guess another example came to mind was that, if remember like those cubic zirconium rings, like, or the zirconium was a diamond, right? But there's a kind of gold plated. For those who are aware, like jewelry can be gold plated, which means it's painted in like gold color, but it's not gold. Um, and so if you were to walk in, if like you were with a crowd of people, and you knew that this particular, say they were having a sale, like, off of their jewelry. And it was like, get everything for, $10, all of these like wonderful looking jewelry. But you knew that it was only gold plated. You didn't know, you knew that. They didn't have that insight into that. So everyone is rushing to get the gold because they think it's gold because it looks like gold. But you knowing that, like, you don't have that desire to go get the gold. You don't have that desire to chase after it. So everybody's looking at you and you're standing back and you're going like, don't you want to come and get it? And he's like, no, I'm good. Because you have that insight that it's not like real. It's not the real thing. So just sharing these examples. So just to kind of get an idea that when you get that deeper insight, that deeper understanding, experiential, that what is disciplinary and like, challenging and hard to do and hard to remember and, a strife and all of that. It's same amount of thing. It just like it natural dispassion is there. A natural willpower is there. Semen willpower, right? Because you're not going to be running after the jewelry and everybody's going to look, oh, look at you. Like, you have such strong willpower, but it's because you know that it's fake. And I think Sebama used that. I think I typed it in chat. He talked about the fatal flaw that, once you gain insight and understanding that it's not the source of happiness, abiding happiness, it does give pleasure through the senses, but not abiding happiness, which is what really one is seeking, the soul is seeking. Then one is able to, detach more and more in a more effortless way. I look at it also like, how once upon a time before I was vegetarian, if I went to a family dinner or something like that, I had a reputation for just eating everything, myself and my dad. And so everybody was surprised when I became a vegetarian, and I would go sit at the family table with all the favorite, dishes that were not vegetarian, vegan, and I wouldn't touch them. Why? Because they're seeing it as food. I'm seeing it as like, ooh, dead animals, cruelty, poison, all that. And so that was like a level of dispassion. So when the mind comes to understand in a experiential way, the nature of self, then the dispassion is not about like, so it's not so much effort to turn away. It just becomes a natural, like, yeah, no, thanks. I know that's not correct. In a more instinctive and intuitional type of way. So just those are things you can kind of reflect on if where, depending on where you are in your experience, to just kind of get an idea of what it could, what it could be like to basically be in the world and have a level of equanimity that whether it's, pleasure or pain that's going along, that, you have a level of stability in your higher nature, your soul essence, that though the mind and personality, the mind and body personality may be affected, but there's a deeper inner stability that is not particularly affected. More of handling the situation in a practical way. That's up.
Okay, Dua. So the book is available there for sale. It has been released a few weeks ago.
Uta,
Uta, go ahead.
Ujasabai, it's a question with regard to Ujas Sarmad here. A question with regard to this book in relationship to the books you've recently published. So one could read this book on how long it takes for enlightenment. And can you just speak to maybe a little more about how this might relate to um, the other books that one you has produced recently that if one wants to get on the path or utilizing the recent books to help, can you speak to the connection or how much one might go through this process to get the research and the background understanding, but then might use the other books to um, further get clarity about how they might want to pursue practice, if they're particularly newer to the teachings.
All right. Um, I was going to look up the book covers there, and the computer is playing tricks though. Um, okay, so there are 3 books that have been released so far in the series, and there should be 5 total. There's 2 more in the series. This is the Kemetic Transpersonal Psychology series, and as I was saying, it's not in a particular order. They're coming out kind of organically. The first book was the Awakening the Aware Witness Self, and that one deals with key teachings of this book series, as well as key teachings from other important books, like particularly the Purdom Haru. That if we have these key understandings, we will have the essence of the teaching, and we will also have an integrated framework for understanding the teaching. So that is what the Awakening book brings. Then the Mental Health and Ancient Egyptian Psychology. That book deals with the wisdom text, so Sage Amenemopet, the teachings related to human psychology and enlightenment, and so that one is specifically a didactic teaching, which means that you're being given specific teachings, for study, reflection, and practice. And he has a particular perspective and terminology of understanding human psychology, and the problems of the psyche, the element or the levels of consciousness that are manifesting in the personality from a very so we say coagulated, occluded, uh, in the ego personality, moving to an expanded nature with the abnetter, the divinity of your heart, and then that one expands into Nebuchadnezzar, universal divinity, consciousness, existence. So I think that one also, the way I wrote it, it relates the ancient teaching to the modern research and understanding of human psychology, and all of course all of it relating to the understanding of how human psychology relates to enlightenment. And now this third book, which was actually a chapter in that mental health book, it turned out to be its own book relating to, because in one of the chapters I was discussing the practices and how long it takes and all that kind of thing, and then that began to open up to a larger discussion. And so that this particular book that we're talking about today is meant to help us understand the nature of the practice, the nature of the spiritual struggle, and what needs to be done in order to succeed on the spiritual path. And so that's how this particular book fits in. How should we be understanding not just the teachings in the series, but really it goes back to it also includes another book that is upcoming, which is the scripture of Hra and Heteru, and that's going to be an extensive. It's going to be as big as the Metamotpet book, the mental health book, or maybe a little larger. And that one brings the teaching in a wrapper of mythic wisdom. So it is understood more from a perspective, not so didactic, but more from a devotional, mythic perspective. And then there's another one coming after that, hopefully, which is the five gods and goddesses, the five cosmic forces of the human personality, and those are the book that compiles the Kemetic New Year gods and goddesses that are commemorated that relate to the human personality. So that's going to be more of an exploration of these particular cosmic forces, how it manifests in these particular aspects of the human personality, the soul, the intellect, the ego, the physical body, and the entity that, in a sense, harmonizes those and successfully transcends those. And that's the Heru aspect. So that's for this current series. But of course, the Purdom Heru, uh, uh, it composes a large aspect of these two of this series as well, and that is highly reflected in the awareness book. So that's how I would explain, the current and this particular series. The central theme is Kemetic Transpersonal Psychology, and so it's not just in these books. It brings back, it harkens from the Purdom Heru work that has been done in the past and from other scriptures. So that's how I would explain how this fits in.
Dua Sabama. Tap. It's very napper.
Uja Sabai. This is Asara. Can you hear me clearly?
Uja, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Dua. So firstly, I want to say dua for a Nefer presentation. It actually calls to mind some of the way you approach the conversation. So it brings back good old times in some ways, but in a more comprehensive and full way. I just have two simple questions. And I want some. So in the conversation, you talked about that you could reincarnate, and so within our are we talking about just the human personality that reincarnates? Is that what we're saying, that the individuated personality skips through time and space on this journey to an enlightened awareness? Is that the proper understanding of that?
On that which quote unquote incarnates is the RU that has been accumulated, that is remnant in the unconscious mind when the personality expires. So according to the Purdom Heru, when a person dies, you have different chapters. Like for instance, there's a chapter of not dying a second time in the netherworld. Why would there be a second death in the netherworld? The idea is that when a physical human person dies, there's a teaching that says ba er pet and kat er ta. So the soul goes to heaven and the body goes to the earth. So the physical elements disintegrate and they go back to their constituent aspects of the constituent uh, configurations before the personality, with the power of individuated consciousness, incarnated into the body and caused that body to aggregate the physical elements that constitute the physical body, meaning the water and the earth and the minerals and everything else. So when a person expires, the physical body disintegrates. But what happens to the subtler levels of the personality? The mind, the conscious mind also begins to disintegrate. And so you're not going to have uh, thoughts of continuing lingering thoughts about the world and time and space and your relationships and all that kind of thing. What remains is the seeds, the remnant seeds of that human life that remain unresolved in the unconscious mind. That will cause uhema, it will cause reincarnation, will cause living again. And that living again will be, so this will be like seeds that impel a movement towards associating again with another body. And as it's referred to as reincarnation. And so what is happening is that you have lost the previous mind, but you're going to have another mind that's going to come together. So you're going to have experiences and with your senses. And some people can have memories from the previous life. Most people don't. But this has been demonstrated. So what reincarnates is actually the seeds that your consciousness is holding on to. Meaning consciousness, your soul, your individuated consciousness. Because you're not aware of your universal. If you're aware of your universal and transcendental, you won't have anything to do with the limited seeds of your remnants of your previous experiences. You wouldn't even be thinking about those. You wouldn't even be holding on to those. That would dissipate, and you would. It's like a river going into an ocean. That's how it is. That was one of the metaphors or one of the analogies. A river going into the ocean, the water of the river becomes one with the water of the ocean. If you would have a situation where you have a river coming down from a mountain and it goes into, you say, a little reservoir, and that you can think of that as the death of that river, and then the reservoir is going to open up to another river, that's another life. But if it goes into the ocean, that's discovering enlightened consciousness. And then whatever happened in that previous life, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have any meaning. It's gone, and it never happened anyway. So what causes the incarnation is the seeds, the remnants, the residues. It's like when you have you're cooking something in the kitchen. You have something strong, garlic or something strong that you're cooking. You clean out the whole pot and everything is taken out, but you still have a smell. And if that is the case, then that smell is going to continue on. It's going to impel its fragrance into the next meal that is put in there. If it is completely cleaned out and there's no remnants, anything, then that's the enlightened experience. But you still have, if like furthering this analogy a little further, if you clean out the pot completely clean, you can still put other things in it, but those things are not going to touch the pot. They're not going to have any consequence to the pot. That's the enlightened person. The unenlightened person, you put his pot, and all that smell and all those ingredients, they're all affecting and they're embedding themselves into the pot. And you can't clean it out because they're so strongly embedded in there. So what is incarnating is the remnants, the seeds of desire, because you didn't fulfill your desire in this lifetime, and you're still longing for it, you're still leaning on it for your happiness, and you must achieve it. You must have uh, a child that you can love, so you can have progeny. You didn't get a chance to do it this time. You must fall in love, and you must do this, you must do that. That musting is going to keep you running, and that's going to keep you reincarnating. But it's not. So what is interesting is that the enlightened consciousness, due to ignorance, has individuated itself, and it thinks, I am this individual having these individual experiences, and these are my memories, and this is what I'd like, and this is what I feel, and this is what I'm holding on to. The consciousness, it has nothing to do with what is happening. Just like when you have a dream at night, consciousness that is projecting the dream has nothing to do really with the dream, except that it's an experience that it is witnessing. In the same way, in reality, even though we have strong experiences in time and space and strong relationships and intense things happening, it actually, in the final analysis, it has no relationship to enlightened consciousness, except your enlightened consciousness is witnessing it. You look in a mirror, and the mirror reflects your projection, but you have nothing to do with the mirror. So and you're looking at the reflection, and you think that it's something real, but it's no reality. It's just a reflection. There's some little analogies, different ways of thinking about it and understanding it. So it's really the seeds that are causing the desire and the aggregation of elements to bring up another body together and hold it together for a time, so it can have more experiences until it's time for that body to expire. And if those seeds are not resolved, there will be another cycle, and that can go on extensively. And think about it. There is no since existence is infinite and eternal, therefore the possibility of reincarnating is endless, virtually endless, and there is vast venues to have those experiences, those incarnations. As vast as this universe seems to be, it could be like a scintillating dust particle. And think about it, because it's in your dream world where you have a dream at night, you incarnate yourself into your dream, and it's a vast world that you've created in your dream that doesn't exist, has no substance, but it's vast and it seems to be real while it's happening. And you can fall asleep in your dream and have another dream within that dream, another vast world. Since it's a projection, there's no necessary end to it. Just like you open up a folder in your computer, You can open up another folder inside that folder and another folder inside that folder. Or you can open up several different folders within a folder. And in the end, it's really consciousness that is sustaining it and falling into the delusion that the folder is real, that the reflection in the mirror is real. So it is the illusion, the ignorance that is reincarnating. It's not consciousness. Consciousness doesn't incarnate. It merely witnesses events that are projecting. But the events themselves have no validity. They have no substance. It's only really the enlightened consciousness that has the substance. It is the reality. Did that answer the question?
Do I? I was listening intently. I do have one more question for you, if I can, quickly. You mentioned that in the book you have a chapter where you deal with purported people who are purportedly enlightened, and their experiences, etc. One, how is that being determined? And two, are there Kemetic examples in that chapter?
Okay, well, I was trying to use people who might be well known, people in the 20th century, people who are still around now in the 21st century. Um, I was trying to use also people who are known in the West as well. And you're asking a question: how do we determine um, the uh, uh, it really depends on how a person expresses their experience of consciousness to kind of get a sense of their status, shall we say, of enlightened awareness or self-awareness. I can put it that way. So if the philosophy is this works even for an unenlightened person. If an unenlightened person is well schooled and have a uh, a decent working understanding of the nature of enlightenment that has been explained by those who are purported to be enlightened, or scripturally, I'm talking about now, not necessarily people who are around today or recent. I'm talking about what has been the standard that has been set by those who have written the scriptures that we recognize as enlightened uh, productions. And so, how do people who have expressed themselves in light of that context, how do their expressions stand up? How the things that they say, the feelings they express. That's one aspect. The next one is how do they act? Are they do they say that they're enlightened beings, but then they are always yelling and cursing and excited at people, uh, they had I'm not sure if some of you remember back in the 70s, 80s, you had I remember who it was, a Swami who, well, there's been a couple of them who, who were supposed to. Swami just means a renunciate, somebody who renounces the world of time and space for spiritual practice. And so he became very popular, running around in Rolls Royces and with a harem of women and things like that. and he was known to have said, wow, if people, really find me out, my goose is cooked, kind of thing. Um, so how do they do their actions reflect their enlightened understanding? Do they How do they comport themselves? Do they comport themselves with composure and with serenity, or with agitation and delusion when they meet a challenge in life and things like that? So even a non-enlightened person, if they have that understanding, they should be able to discern, okay, this person is more on this in this spectrum. This person is over here, yeah, kind of thing.
To us, much appreciated. Never. Yeah.
And I think I'm not sure if I did this, if I in doing the research, um, uh, I followed some of these people over the years, so the last 30, 40 years, and I followed their actions and their lives and their experiences, and as well as their expressions of the teaching and their understanding of, and sometimes people, you get a sense from that when people say certain things, you get a sense of if enlightened uh, consciousness is expressing, is working through this personality, or if it's superficial, if it's something that they're just repeating philosophically that they learn or something like that. And for I think pretty much all of those people, the things that I've read that they have said, and the things that I have seen in their programs, although I'll give a proviso, a caveat on that in a minute. Allow me to think that they have experience and may be stable in enlightened consciousness to some degree. Now, the caveat is that, and this is going to another interesting aspect of the discussion that I did not go into, but I've discussed this before, is that um, it is possible to have attained stable, uh, enlightened consciousness, but also still have remnants of RU that need to be worked through, to be ironed out, to be purified. That is possible, and that is known to have happened, and it has been written about, especially in the Indian texts. Um, so if that happens, uh, it behooves one who who is understanding about these things, whether they're enlightened or unenlightened, is to be aware of that, and this manifests through the life of the person, through their activities, through their experiences, how they carry on in life, and the things that they do and say, and etc. Like I was explaining earlier. Um, so there can be a person who has attained a measure of stable, enlightened consciousness, awareness, but also may have some RU of agitation still left, that they get annoyed with something happens, or when somebody says something, or something like that. And but they don't, they're not going to go lash out or go and kill somebody, and nothing like that. Um, So, but that can throw somebody off, especially a person who is not enlightened, who doesn't understand that, and they may find they may be looking for a guru or for a sage or something like that, and they find somebody who they think is elevated, and they might be, and from a relative perspective, elevated from them, but it may have still some issues still remaining, and that can throw a person off in their. They say, "Oh, I thought this person was enlightened," and then he does such and such, or then she acts this such and such a way, or and so the idea in that kind of case is the wisdom is to until and this is what I talked about. You're vetting the spiritual teacher, and that you may take some time and see them in different contexts and different situations. Um, and once fully vetted, then you can give more of your allegiance and your trust, and it's et cetera, et cetera. If it is found that a person is the latter, a person who is has achieved some measure of enlightened consciousness, but is still has some ego aspects still to iron out, then that person's enlightened capacity can be accessed, but with the understanding that there are some other issues, personality issues that may be intervening, and those should be discounted. Those should be left aside. Like for instance, one should not be thinking, "Oh, this is what enlightenment is, a crazy enlightened person, like, an enlightened person who talks about his wisdom, and then they're stupid and crazy on the side. I don't want that. I don't want to." So, an untrained spiritual practitioner, follower, or aspirant should not think that way about enlightened consciousness or about a personality who has attained. Um, and so the person who has attained steadiness, stability in the enlightened consciousness, who can be a model, and, that is what talked about in the teaching of Aset and Ra. Aset is the model of the enlightened person, and in a way, goddess Heru also, and Heru in the Asarian resurrection. These are models of enlightened consciousness attainment as a human growing up to be an enlightened personality. And of course, the manifestation of that is the sages, Amenemoped and Tahotep and all these other people, and some of the Peras, the pharaohs, are also models for that as well. And like I said, some people may have a little quirks and things like that, but those should be discounted and make use of the positive aspects and discount the remnants that are to be discounted. And why? Because the enlightened consciousness is the real, and the egoistic elements are the illusory elements. So they should not be thought of as a reality that pertains to enlightened consciousness, or really even to the enlightened personality that we're looking at. Or we can think of them as being related to the ego, but not to the consciousness. So that's how that should be looked at from a healthy perspective. Now, if a person is, as long as I'm giving this proviso, I should give another one. But if a person has attained some measure of enlightened consciousness, meaning that they can speak the teaching, and you can tell from their that they're speaking from experience and not from a scriptural memory or intellectual uh, memorization of scripture or something like that. But they also have strong um, ego delusions to the extent of being um, maybe not murderous, but being potentially harmful, uh, like the person I was talking about who was going on a Rolls Royce and all that kind of thing. And there are others who have been accused of using their positions so that they can rape women and do different things, and children and things like that. those are things that should not even be, those people should be isolated, and they might be considered in the context of which is possible, a context of a person who is has a measure of enlightened awareness, but also they have a psychotic break, in the context that they are also have delusions, and so one part is highly sane, and the other part is highly. So anyway, yeah, I think you get the drift of what I'm getting at.
Indeed, it actually sounds like the character you mentioned in The Matrix, who had experienced, getting out of the dream state, but consciously was like choosing to indulge in the dream world, still almost rejecting the liberation.
Which is a form of insanity. If one is going to know the truth, but then consciously choose on truth, what does that say about the personality? It is compromised. It is corrupted. So
That's it.
that's a
Puja Sabama. This is Asar Golden. You mentioned Nahast as the word for enlightenment. I was wondering if you could explain the difference and relationship between the term Makaru and Nahast.
hmm yeah. What I was saying, that there are some other words, some other terms that mean, they have basically the same meaning, and that would be one of them. Makeru means truth of speech. It means that your mouth has been mouth, which is a projection of your conscious awareness, has been cleansed, um, to a degree that you have spiritual victory. And it means the same thing as Nahas, spiritual awakening, um, Nukra, Nukheru, or Nukpura. All these relate to the same idea.
Dua Sabama. Attack.
Yeah, that's one of those terms. See, we have some different terms. Remember, I was talking about a few talks ago about doing a bridging document, because some of the terminologies of the different scriptures are a little variant, even though they relate to the same thing. And so that's an example of that. There should not be confusion about it.
Dua. Attack.
Sebama, if you want to announce that you're going to actually start a series on Kemet TV for, I guess, the regular Kemet TV, right? Not a special Kemet TV. So those who are members of Kemet TV will have access to it, based on the books, taking not like a read through of from beginning to end, but you'll be picking particular topics and highlighting it. And we'll start doing that once a month.
Nee. So it's
Are you starting in March or April?
I think we're going to start in March.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if I would call it a series per se. It's going to be a because series might imply that there's going to be for sure a lecture every month, and so that may or may not happen because maybe traveling or may I need to take time off and things like that. But so it's going to be part of the regular. So I don't necessarily want to promise that it will be a series, every, because I'm trying to leave myself leeway, so it'll be very relaxed. And so if I'm available and there's time, that we'll have a talk on a specific topic from one of these new books, from the books in the new series. And let's say going on for a few months, a year maybe. We'll see how it goes, and it'll be for the regular Kemetic TV membership. So if you don't have a membership, just go ahead and get one, and you'll have access to it, plus a library of hundreds of other lectures that have been given and on the different books and um, annual conferences and the different things. So you will start that next month, which starts next month, starts tomorrow, I guess.
Dua. And for those who, are eligible for joining the Kanum Nefer, we still do that once a month. Actually, twice a month we have Kanum Nefer with Sibama. We have the chat on Saturdays, which is usually like for those in EM1 course, the Egyptian Mysteries Level 1, which is a very broad spectrum, deep introductive course with Sibama. And then also we have an open session, Kanum Nefer, which allows aspirants to ask questions in an open forum, and or sometimes Sibama, they bring something, a specific topic. Sibama may share a specific topic if there are no questions. So if you are on the chat signal group, just keep those programs in mind. And then the frustrations in the spiritual path, we're going to be working with Friday nights and Sunday mornings. Sunday after the devotional. Remember, Sundays we do have the devotional at 8:30. And then after the devotional, we have the frustrations in the spiritual path most Sundays, except if we have other scheduled classes, either the clergy or the whole like EM2 course with the Eastern Resurrection, then I may not have the spiritual frustrations in the spiritual path, but we're going to have it tomorrow, and then we're going to have Wednesday, a special session on Wednesday, and also a special session the following Friday. I'm trying to get through, we're working on the precept, I have not eaten my heart out, and we're kind of using the Abnetter from Sage Amenemopet. We're going to start that tomorrow, or continue that tomorrow. We're using that focus to develop a framework to be able to use as a stopgap measure for preventing what Sibama talked about, the ego personality from spiraling into more delusion and more ego tantrums, I guess. And then Thursdays, the Temple of Set, they are having their meditation every third Thursday. Once again, they have restarted that program into the and I believe it's also on the YouTube channels as well. It's being posted there, I think. Anything else, Sibama? Any other announcement? Any other? And just big due to Baspakat as usual for all her facilitation of Sebama, but also of us all, that, um, Ben Bastaku, Sarmat, for a lot of time and effort to get flyers and programs and scheduling when things are going to be done. So much due to all of you and all of those who attend as well too. That's up.
Well, one last announcement is to, for if you haven't done so, try to get your book reviews into Amazon by the 18th of the month for special promotions that we're starting. If you would like to help out with
Uja
Uja,
Sebama. Oh, go ahead, Sebaja.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't know if you, for that, I just want to say if you can please, if you're eligible to make the effort to do that, please do that. I was going to say, sages rarely ask for favors, and this is something to support the temple, something that we need to do to be able to facilitate the algorithms. Algorithms is that how you say it, for Amazon, to facilitate the books. The book sales there. So Sivama would really appreciate it if you all can take the time to do it. That's up. Go ahead, boss.
Oh, one thing on that before Basaka. My understanding is that anyone can do a review if it is if they if you buy the book and you do a review, then it's called a verified review. If it's just a person coming and putting a review, then it's unverified. But either way, like if you bought a book, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever, that's fine. So that was it for the announcement. It's anyone can do it. So if you read it and you have an idea what it is and you support it.
Okay, do it for sure. Not right. Okay, heads up.
Uja Sebama, I was just wondering if I may show the muataashby.com site, or if you want to share that.
You can show it.
Okay.
But I just want to ask a question. Does everybody see the image and everybody gets the idea of what the image is trying to say from what I just discussed? Just curious to know if the picture gives the impression that I was thinking that it might. Any comments on that? No comments.
Uja, you don't really want the regular suspects, right?
At this point, anybody will do it.
'Cause we might have already given you our comments, but Zoni, I appreciated the pyramids being on there, taking it back to that time of the assessment and bringing it forward from there to modern times.
I would say that it appears I would very Italian. I see the balance, the ancient wisdom, if you will, the pyramids and so on, and the person in the middle balancing that consciousness with the modern, the modern skyscrapers and all that kind of thing. So I see that union of that lower and higher in that element.
Okay, Dua. I see Shimzahid said, love the pic, and what it means to her is what worked then works now. That's among everything that was mentioned. That's the central one I was going for. To I think I kind of implied that in the presentation that what it's interesting that what they discovered in ancient times that worked for the human mind and human awareness is the same thing that can work today, and it's that is demonstrated by the studies. And I was showing the back of the book just now, and something I did not mention about the studies is that it also talks about what happens to studies that have been done on the brains of meditators, of people who do chant for extended time, of people who spend hours either hours or have spent years. What happens to their physiologically? There's some interesting uh, researches on that, on those findings, the structures of the nervous system and the brain, how they change and things like that. So yeah, it's the idea of the balance. That was one of the things I was going for also, to balance the past and present and the person in the middle who is living in our times the way we are, who is balancing the modern manifestation of society with all its good and bad aspects, with the high attainment of human consciousness and the legacy from the past, and how we can access that and make use of that for today. So do what for all your allowing yourself to be quizzed.
Just, I think that's like some important points that came out of there, I believe, because I think generally most people believe because the technology is advanced that human beings are also advanced, because it would seem like, well, advanced human beings would have to be creating the advanced technology. And that's not necessarily the case, as we are witness to technological development, because the human mind brain structure, I think, really has not changed, is what they say, for um, since way back when, more or less. So it's still always throughout any era, it still falls prey to the same issues of egoism.
Hmm.
So like Shamsahid said, what worked then still works now, because it's the same issue essentially. And it's despite the technology, or in spite of it. What's up?
Okay, this is the author page on the Amazon. You can see all the books that are on there. I see several books with some stars and things and reviews, and but some of them don't. Now they're, I think we have over like 80 books at this point, and so some of them are very popular and they have lots of reviews and things, and some of them don't. That's what we're trying to help all of them out. But in any case, whatever can be done, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and conclude then. Do out to everyone for attending. Hope it was interesting and beneficial.
We're just about. Can I show the other site?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Ugh.
Uja, can you all see that?
Neat.
Okay, so this is the muataashby.com site. And as you can see, the most recent books are here. And there's a link for you to be able to listen to Sebama's YouTube video about them. But on this site, things are set up in series. And so for this brand new series, if you go here, because I had shared in the chat area that you can purchase the books with different options. So let's say this one that Sebama just highlighted today. Now, if you go on here, then you can either purchase it from Amazon, Tertulia, Barnes & Noble, or Bookshop. And I had shared too that if you go to Tertulia, and if you are a member, you can sign up to be on their newsletter and you get 30% off. But if you become a member, you would get the book for 50% off. And then each subsequent book that you purchase would be at least 10% off. It is a $25 fee to be a member, an annual $25 fee to become a member. So like certainly maybe like the hardcover book of Sibama's book, it might be worth it to do it with that or any of them. But I just wanted to share, it does give you a 30-day free trial. And I believe you can also make reviews here as well. Much to a tip. And Sibama, I just want to share about a little bit about this book. What I found was so profound is that you're giving real world examples of that this can be done, and so it to me is very comforting to know that. It's a,
Neat. That was one of the things that I was going for, and also to put it in a context because we think of it, we give the teachings and then we kind of let it sit out there and say generally yes, this should be done, this can be done, but these are examples of people who have made these efforts, who have tread paths, and how long it took them, what they had to go through, their struggles, and so in that context, most of them, I would say that there are stories, especially in the East, of stories of enlightened personalities who were enlightened since they were at the child level, meaning that they had certain RU that was remnant, and the act of incarnation itself resolved the remnant RU. So it was that little, and so then they became sagely while they were in their youth, and some people have some wilos to sow, and so it may take them longer. They have to grow up, become adult, and go through a little bit of life and challenges, disappointments, and they make the required efforts, and they achieve. Others, might take longer. They live their lives, and then they are in their older age, um, in their later life, and they make they go they become intensive. The book talks about that too, about being intensive with the daily meditation or a hybrid. It gives you some different modalities to think about, like a hybrid kind of system where you do a little bit of meditation daily, but then you arrange to go on regular retreats where you can intensify yourself and not be distracted. But some people works better. I'll meditate 2 or 3 hours a day, kind of thing. So, um, it gives an insight into what is required, what is needed, and what possibilities are, and how to apply oneself, and how much time and effort is required, and that kind of thing. So it puts it more, it just flesh it out more. Um, and it's, yeah, I think it's more encouraging to have that kind of knowledge. And even if one is not able to necessarily do it, but now you have the knowledge, and then you can be thinking about it in the back of your mind, and the RU is operative in a way that is going to manifest at some point in the future to facilitate things. So there are many aspects to that. So it's also, I should extend gratitude to the sages of old who left this legacy, and not just necessarily because this book is not just dealing with the Kemetic. It's actually kind of a world. So all the sages of uh, of the past who left these legacies for us to know about and to follow, and to have better lives, because they had compassion for us. So they left these things, and they tried to explain the best they could before they left. Um, and really, it's a manifestation. If you want to really look at it deeply, it's a manifestation of enlightened consciousness, God, that has operated through these people, and we call them sages and saints and things like that. And it's a form of compassion for those who are living, for those who are ongoing. And so, if one thinks that one is here just thrown into this crazy turmoil of life with no lifeboat or anything like that, this is the lifeboat. This is the uh, the lifeline that has been thrown out. But only those who are ready and able and willing can access it. And until they are ready, the world will teach them what they need to know through the sufferings and the frustrations, et cetera, and intermittent happy times. All right. Do it to everyone again. We'll go ahead and conclude with concluding prayers. Ama suepaneter, sauk sumete paneter, adwanuma, kedipaharu. Etebdi sineteri metuaj,
Rekati sinatiri matuwash.
etebdi sineteri metuaj,
Tati sinatiri matuwash.
etebdi sineteri metuaj,
Tati sinatiri matuwash.
etebdi sineteri metuaj.
Tati sinatiri matuwash.
Om hete pete pete.
Om pata pata pata.
Pete and do it.
Pata.
You can look for this recording. It'll be placed on YouTube. The subsequent, the let's call it series. The set of new lectures will be um, for the Kemet TV, and so those who are members, will get notices. Really, everyone will get notice, but those who will be able to participate are Kemet TV members. Okay, it's up.
Uji Sigama, also, I forgot to say that I will still be starting the Sage Metamopit I guess we decided to do it in Kemet TV also. Going through the Sage Metamopit book, the mental health book, reading section by section, starting with part 2 in April. We moved it from March to April. That's up.
Okay, it's up.